Okay, Shane Rose, my goal for us today, maybe I should have told you this in advance, but let's see how it goes. My goal for us today is to keep this one short and sweet, but super focused on the how-to behind contracts and behind retainer management. I know in a previous episode, we talked all about the pricing model and how that's the nucleus and that's like the key factor for profitability and success. But the pricing model only works. You can only set those boundaries and implement it throughout your project if your contract protects and supports that, and then your retainer management enforces that. Would you agree?
1000%.
So let's start with the contract. Talk to me about when you're looking through a client's existing contract or when you're implementing and customizing a template for a designer, what are those key clauses that you're looking for and what are the absolute must-haves in your contract to make this pricing model work?
Number one, clearly defined scope with clearly defined deliverables you are providing. For example, I am going to be furnishing the living room. Here is the suggested furnishing list, just suggested that I am anticipating. So you have a very clear product count of what you're anticipating in that room. If you were working on a custom built-in in that room, I'm clearly stating if I'm providing multiple concepts, that 2 concepts are provided, and clarifying if the 2D drawing will include color or not. If it is providing rendering or not, crystal clear what you're anticipating the project to be. That is step 1.
What are some ways you've seen designers like have that wrong or like not quite enough? Like it just says living room, but it's not mentioning number of items, or like what are some common ways you've seen people have to crystallize this even more?
Yeah, way too general. Furnishing of the living room and built-in millwork, like just very, very, very vague. That leads to a really wide interpretation of what that means.
Right.
And
because how are you going to stand there and say, oh, no, this is a scope addition or, this goes beyond our scope if that's not crystal clear somewhere in writing that the client signed?
Right. And in the pricing model, we want to be estimating a design fee, whichever way you're closing that to a client, but behind the scenes, it's an hourly based, data driven.
Go
project.
listen to the pricing model conversation.
Please.
If this is not ringing a bell for you, because it's the critical first step, but this is the backup.
Yeah. Critical first step. Then we need to document exactly the process and the deliverables that you're estimating to include with a material and product, material and furnishings itemized. We want it itemized because 7 times out of 10, your scope is changing after the conceptual phase. It is, right. There's a lot of assumptions you're making in the beginning. Oh, maybe we're going to do an accent wall with wall covering. Maybe we're going to do a millwork detail on this wall. Like we don't really know until we clarify this in phase 1. So we need a clearly defined scope. We'll talk to the management and things of that in the second part. So that's first phase. The second part of that contract is clearly defining how you are going to manage the contract with the client. How are we maintaining client expectations? That's different for different people. Some suggestions there are at completions of phases or midpoint of phases, or is a weekly, bi-weekly cadence, right? That you're just kind of consistently realigning. That's the hard part. We'll get into the retainer management, but I always say the close is easy, giving you a pricing tool and a way to like price your jobs higher with more strategy and logic behind them. Super easy. Like most people I'm closing with them $30,000 in those initial projects that we're closing in the first month. And they're like shocked, that's the easy part. The management of aligning, either keeping the client on the path you've carved out for them or aligning and providing options to them when there's 2 paths you could take. And there are always 2 paths. The only reason there's not 2 paths is if you pass go and you don't give the client the option of the 2 paths and you made the decision for them. What I mean by that is we close out in the conceptual phase, and we decide that we are going to do this whole big custom concept millwork in the living room. It wasn't originally in the agreement. We need to, in our retainer management, which allows us to catch this moment, we need to stop and clarify to the client that this wasn't included in the scope, that either A, we absolutely have no problems adding it in. This is the anticipation of time and cost investment for this deliverable to be added. Or B, we don't need to add it. We keep the scope for exactly as it was clarified. Maybe within contingency you provide, you can give them a very fast hand sketch to pass over for them to go take the lead with. But there are always two options. One, which keeps the client inside the lines of the money of what they originally agreed to. And the other just gets that pre-approval that this is an add-on. It is going to take extra time, whether you're collecting in the moment or collecting later. We just need them to be on the same page so that you don't offer it and then get to the end of your project when they're spending all this money on purchasing and being like, oh, I need more money for the design time. Like, that will not feel good.
No.
And they will not react well.
You can only help the client stay inside the lines if you drew the lines in the contract, which is exactly what Shane is outlining for us now. Right. So it all really does trickle down, and it's all on you on setting those expectations accurately.
Right. So we need to clearly outline how you're collecting money, how you're going to manage that agreement, and if scope is added, or if, and the part of your scope outline also needs to clearly outline the uncontrollable variables outside of your control that are factored into the contract. What I mean by that is client meetings and communication, revision time, contractor and trade communication, questionably the order purchasing management side is that's handled many, many different ways, whether that's an outside fee or what. But we have to clearly state that inside this process we've defined for you, these are the uncontrollable variables, and this is how much time I've put into these buckets, which will allow you to point to that contract if you need to. If you end that conceptual phase, the client's meetings are taking twice as long, or the client is firing 80 million emails or breaking the boundaries of text message, what you do in that very early stage is confront that and say, hey, Mrs. Client, I just want to bring this to your attention that we are spending a little bit more time in our meetings and in communication. And I'm totally fine if you need that in your process, but I haven't factored that time into the agreement. So I just wanted to touch base that either A, this feels good for you, you need it, that we have like 3 other meetings in cadence. The project has 8 more weeks left, and we're likely going to need about 10 more hours, maybe 10 to 15 hours more if we keep at this pace. Or we can really try to refine this communication flow, maybe collect all your thoughts in one concise email, have them prepared in our next meeting so we can tackle it in a concise fashion, and we'll just really try to stay on target and have more efficient meetings. Which way, do you want to go? Control what you can't control by pointing to what you have outlined in your agreement. One more important thing I wanted to say before I forget, because I wanted to say it earlier, is you have to remember that they will not remember the contract. Like, you have to continue to use that tool in your favor. Yeah. Clients are looking at the money. When you're first debriefing, there's a lot of information. You're educating them about process, how it all works. But realistically, in sales, on the consumer side, they already know they want to hire you for the designer. They really only care about the price tag. And they really don't understand the full breadth of your design deliverables. Hopefully you did a good job to kind of explain, but you're going to have to continue to explain and advocate. And that's the hard part when you're a busy owner. If you don't have that administrative team supporting you and you haven't given someone else the leadership to manage those expectations, as the owner of the company, you are also forgetting the contract if you have 13 projects going on. And odds are you're just leaning to do the most and be the yes person and just appease this client and try to keep it all afloat. And then if we're not doing the proper management of expectations, I commonly will have people be like, what do I do? You know, they're at the end of the project, they're out of fees, or they're needing more money from the client, and we've missed a lot of steps.
Asking is going to feel icky for whatever reason.
We've missed a lot of steps.
It's so funny because what you wanted to say, as we tend to do, went hand in hand with what it made me think of, which is like, I think, tell me if you think this is true, but I think this is why you're really a proponent of the closing call. Like you said, clients are still going to forget those contract terms that you talked about, but they've heard it before and they've heard it from you and they've heard your why and why that's important for both them in terms of keeping ownership of their project and their pace and things, being in control of what they can be, and for the designer for all the reasons we're talking about in this conversation. But yeah, they're still going to forget it, but they've heard it before, so that when you present those A's and B's, it's not like, what? It's, oh, yeah,
if
we talked
you
about
are
revision
not,
time.
If you are not doing a closing call, you have to do it. It's an alignment of expectation and a review of terms of service. And I am that big believer.
We tend to call them the contract review meeting, front facing to the client, just in case anyone felt icky about contract review. You know, I get
call
that.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's not closing them from discovery to a design consult. It's closing to a flat fee intake inclusive of a 2-part consultation. And yes, it is always relevant. I don't care how small the scope is, because you could sell a $2,000 scope to someone, and if they think they're getting a rendering out of it, sometimes the smaller jobs are the worst ones because their expectations are so misaligned. So we'll keep going on contract terms, but you should be reviewing these live on a call with your client. So,
and Shayna is so good at that. So if you're like, I wouldn't know how to facilitate that conversation, please get on Shayna's calendar.
It's also the psychology of that closing call. You know, in terms of sales, when you have someone presented as the creative and someone else presented as your logistics, you know, operations based person, it hits stronger. And I can also be more like, I'm way more harsh with other people's clients than I would have been with my own, because you're also building this relationship as the designer and this kind of sometimes friendship throughout the process.
Like good cop, bad cop almost.
It is a good cop, bad cop, you know, and I'm over there being like, you know, after we go through uncontrollables, and I'll set the tone, because if there's red flags from someone, like, already, you know, we'll do a kind of a psychological profile. If someone is already hammering with inspirational imagery or their ideas or a sale, they're already shopping, red flag, you're going to be paying me. On the closing call, I'm addressing that. Like, in our process, we carve this much time for meetings. We are absolutely willing to go beyond that, but this is the baseline that's included. My recommendation, if you want to stay inside the lines, is to trust the process. If you want to get involved, then your time, flood us with all of your thoughts and inspiration before client meeting one. Client meeting one is to align aesthetic, inspiration, concept, all of it. We're here for it. But after that, no mas, you know, like no more, or you are going to curveball this project and cause more time. Again, doesn't matter if you want to do that, but in terms of data, it will cause extra time to this project. You can use certain terms to deter people. So that goes to my next section, right? So now we align scope. We're very clear with deliverables that we're providing. We align process. So it's clear at what level of service. We overview the uncontrollable variables of what we have factored into the time. So it's clear that they can contribute to the cost exceeding what we have outlined, and the contractor that you can step in and have communications with and trades and things like that, because you're going to sign those contracts directly with them or opt in for a higher level of management. Then we review how we're going to keep them in control. We keep you in control by this level of management. And if we need to fall outside the lines, we are going to first approach you and give you options. Either this is why we need to do this, and it is going to exceed, and these are the rough parameters. If not, this is what you need to do inside of your project. Time is time. I always say this to clients. Whether we're going to take on the time or you're going to take on the time, the same amount of time is still going to exist. So we have that alignment. And then we move on to purchasing, right? Which is a huge, many bullet points in terms of protection on purchasing. How are you pricing? You know, that's a whole massive conversation. I'll drop a seed to it. We can make a note for a future podcast.
And you're going to start doing another review on this before the procurement phase starts in some cases, right?
In some
because
cases,
clients just need to hear it again.
Yes. Clients need to hear it again. Your full service, very high end clients, right before you place that order, should have the call again to outline all the uncontrollables of purchasing and that remind them that you are on their team as their best advocate, but you cannot control the vendors, you cannot control the shippers, the receivers, the installers, how that product comes unboxed. I mean, this is where the emotional roller coaster begins for that client, and it will fire to you. And if you set the tone and remind them of all these things, you can pivot yourself away from being bad cop and remind them that you are doing the most to advocate on behalf of them, and set the expectation that it's not really if something's going to go sideways. You have a big project. It's definitely happening. It's way better to tell your client that to expect that there will be a few items that arrived damaged. There could be instance that if something shows up, not that it looks like online, we can advocate on behalf of that. Random things do happen that we need to set the tone that it's to be expected so that when it happens, the regulation of their emotions is like, okay, yeah, I know you got it. You're going to take care of it. This is how it works, XYZ. So in terms of purchasing, key protections, right? How are you pricing on the invoice? And regardless of how you're pricing, whether you're doing some discount share, whether you're saying suggested retail, whatever it is, the importance is stating that you are final receipt, that through the use of your resale certificate, you are the end seller. There will be no connection or communication directly with the manufacturer, that you are the final point of sale, because clients can sometimes challenge you when issues occur that they want to step in. Now, what I have said in conversations to kind of deter this is I am using my resale license. That means that there is no consumer line and that it will jeopardize me losing my license if I give you direct contact to the business trade line. Whether that's true or not, I kind of just made that up, but it sounds good, right?
Sounds good. It's working so far.
Sounds good, and it works, right? So, one thing I want to throw out there, and we'll go into this discount share in another call, but one of my big protections is people come up like, how do you prevent being shopped? How do you prevent being shopped? Well, if you're offering, and this is going to be a trigger because I'm discount, it's salespeople. You go to the store, it doesn't say the shirts are marked up 75%. It says the shirts are marked down by 75%. It doesn't mean that your markup is tiny. It's the psychology of the sale. So there's a way to offer a discount share program and have a 60% margin. You're interested in that? Call us, get on my schedule. I'll educate you how, because it's very, very simple how. And what do I do when I offer that in protection of my contract? If you shop me after I present the design, you will void all discounts and you will be charged full MSRP. You say that from the beginning, and I tell people, you will find something cheaper than I'm selling it to you at, because wholesale is not the highest level tier discount you can get. Bulk retail is. And if Lamps Plus ordered 1,000 lamps and they just haven't been selling and they have some stock they're trying to get rid of, they're going to have some massive clearance sale and possibly be selling that thing lower than even the retail discount that I'm giving you. But in actuality, if you, across the savings of all your products, it doesn't outweigh the one or two you're going to find. So just don't do it, right? Hey, guess what? You don't get shopped. Totally transparent. You will find a few things cheaper. Don't do it because your total savings isn't worth it. So if you want to learn how to do that and learn how to make a 60% margin in your sale, like I said, get back on my calendar. Other general things to look out for is die lot changes, making sure you're stating that if that matters, cutting for approvals, your shipping terms, the amount of time it takes to file a claim with most vendors. If you are going to ship product direct, how the client is held responsible, how much time they have to report that box is damaged, don't even receive it. There are so many things around shipping that you are not responsible for shipping fees, how shipping fees are calculated at the time of the shipment and can change, how stock can change, pricing can change. All of this is out of your control. This is a very heavy section you have to be very, very careful with. Custom products, non-refundable. All products, non-returnable. If you decide that, and they are treated as final sale, in the event that you really are pushing for a return, the designer will act on your behalf and will make an attempt. But if there's nothing wrong with the product, you're subject to reshipment, restocking fees. There's so much there. So that is purchasing section. Then you really have to clearly outline after that your, wherever you are in the world, either you're certified project manager or you're calling yourself a design manager, because that's really what you mean. You're not really project managing construction. You're managing the design elements that you have designed in the project. Then we have to really clearly outline what your fee includes of. And either when we're coaching, we're talking about this in two ways. Either you're creating a walk schedule that clearly defines the points in the project that you show up, or you're simplifying it. You're saying, I carve out this amount of time per week for the entire duration that this project lasts. There's kind of two lenses, but really clarifying what you have included or how that works is usually that kind of last section. And then I do typically do a fast review of termination, and depending on how you're selling, the best thing about that design retainer fee range, which gives that flat fee feel, but it really is hourly. Again, listen to the other podcast or get on my schedule. We'll talk through it. But the good thing about that is you can really minimize buyer's remorse. I'm over here being like, okay, your initial retainer to submit is $30,000. And on a flat fee, that can really scare someone because it's like, well, what happens if I don't like working with you? Where's my $30,000? Just done? Versus in the retainer fee, we give the client peace of mind. There is no buyer's remorse. God forbid you are not enjoying this process. The design is not headed in the direction that you like. You can always request that termination, and any unused hours are returned back to you. And that's what I also love about that design fee range is, yes, when we create a clean process and actually price your jobs, 9 out of 10 people are like, oh my God, this is like way higher than I would price. I realize I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. So you're a little bit scared because your fees are so high, but it comes with zero buyer's remorse. Yeah. Okay. We're asking for a lot more money. We're going to make it make sense. It's a clear process. We make them feel confident about it along the way. And we give them management and termination that allows them to feel very secure in making the decision that might be their first leap into hiring a designer with a very high fee range, So I do like to touch on that termination. And then, after that, we just kind of close out. They usually leaves them to no questions with the contract. The only thing we're asking a client to do after that contract review and closing call is to look at the itemized budget on their furnishing list. Material allowances would come in your phase one. So usually it's just furniture. We're looking at this and we're asking them to mark it up. If you'd never buy an area rug at $6,000, let us know now. This is only suggested list, but there usually isn't any markups on scope or contract, nothing. We've reviewed all of it. It really just is kind of the minutia of getting them to say yes and focusing them on the larger bucket of money, which is the purchasing list that they're in full control of. We're just here to let you know the quality that budget would adjust you to if you do make changes to it.
Yeah.
So that's the contract main terms.
That's the contract. And the contract defines exactly how you're pricing that job, protects exactly how you're pricing that job. Now, your job from there is to enforce that. And that's what we're calling this retainer management process. Shay, just to kind of set this up with context, when it comes to retainer management, we're really doing it twice. Well, in two ways, I should say, because we're doing our retainer management and the way that we're reporting to the designer throughout the project. And then there's the retainer management and how we're reporting to the designer's client throughout the project. So if you can kind of take us through both of those, I think that'd be most helpful to really understand what it takes to manage this thoroughly and throughout.
Yeah. So the management will depend on how you're closing the deal. So I'm going to just kind of go through it as an overall points of the project that you should at minimum be doing for your client and where it's serving for you to do internally. So starting off with that conceptual phase, we are assuming that we've aligned the inspiration. We have done all of our concept drawings. So you're either doing proposed new layouts, you're doing furnishing plans, you've got custom products or millwork going on, you're working on those concepts. And that's allowing you to give you the tools to also get those high level quotes in. Because at the close, if you're renovating, you don't know how much the renovation is going to cost. You don't have your allowances for material yet. And often your scope may shift depending on those variables. So at the end of what I would consider that conceptual phase, you need to stop right there, relook at your contract, and see if the scope has changed. We want to be counting up the quantity of furnishing items that we originally intended that we would have to source and cross-reference that. Maybe I anticipated a purchase order list of 50 items. Now we're at 62. Well, guess what? That's more time to source. That's more time to put on the presentation board. That's more time to price, order, manage for that installation. It must be addressed. And going back to the A's and B's of management, either the client creates a priority list and would shorten that purchase order list to align with your first original estimate, or they're like, totally understand where that extra time is going to come from. No, I want to do this. This just happened yesterday on a closing call. It's for an Airbnb. He wasn't thinking through mattresses, linens, towels, all those accessories, and how that you need multiple sets for this. And he was like, oh my God, you're so right. Yes. Let's layer all that in. I'm like, okay, I need to make an adjustment and get this all added in. Obviously a little bit more time, and we align, and you have to do that. So stopping point one after conceptual, you're aligning for yourself. You're also aligning with the client. Okay. Now we're moving on past the conceptual. We understand what's going on. We're starting the detailed design, right? You're starting to source things, order materials, put the presentation together. The next point where we fall into a trap, and the next report is really critically internally during the sourcing, because it's very easy to go into the abyss.
The biggest black hole.
It is a black hole that a lot of designers just fall into that trap. And you know that you can't bill your client if you've gone into the abyss for all that time. Mm-hmm. So creating a reporting system with your admin to track your sourcing should be kind of scheduled out, at least relatively, right? I'm going to get this room done this week, or I'm going to get half of it done this week, or whatever it is. So that simple reporting, as in, hey, you have sourced 30% of this project and you've used 50% of the allotment of hours you wanted to use for sourcing, is going to help you be like, stop getting stuck. Mm-hmm. Make some rules for yourself, because you have to present to the client. And what I tell designers is, be honest, source within the boundaries. If you go to that presentation, you've used your allotment of time, you can say, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm not fully in love with this bed that I found, but usually it's a niche thing that falls you into the abyss. This Queen Trundle bed story, I feel like so many people have heard it.
Or the chandelier. I was about to say, if someone tells me, I listened through every episode to go find what you were talking about where Shayna mentions the chandelier, I will personally send you a cupcake. So there's your challenge and your scavenger hunt.
There you go. Yeah. But, I'll share the bed, because apparently I already shared the chandelier. But, Queen Trundle bed, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And I can very easily go into the abyss. So I know how to structure myself with sourcing to keep myself inside the lines. So all I could find was a Target bed. This was $100,000 furnishing budget for 3 rooms. Okay. So Target Queen Trundle bed, not in alignment with where we should be, but it's what I could find. I could find nothing else. And it made sense after I was educating this, like, oh yeah, queens need center support. So obviously this is very challenging to find a trundle bed under a queen that needs support. Okay, I don't pass go and go into the abyss. I go to that presentation. I let the client know I'm really not thrilled, but I didn't want to just like pass go and start blowing through hours without showing you what I found. Two options here. We either make a custom bed, and this is why I think we need to do it. It is going to kind of really exceed the budget. Or I spend an extra hour. I go into the abyss. I see if I can find anything else. And if not, then this is our option. What are your thoughts? She ended up picking the Target bed. She was like, spend an extra, go for an hour, see if we can find absolutely anything else. It's a guest room. I'm literally going to be in this apartment 2 weeks out of the year. I just don't care. And that's the direction we took, right? You've got to stop yourself because you've got to let the client drive the revision hours. So internal reporting for sourcing, don't go into the abyss. Then after you do that final presentation, the next report is to the client for revisions, because you have a certain allotment of hours. If I work with anyone and I see one round of revision, that is the very first thing we will be changing in that contract. What is that? 20 hours, 1 hour, one round? That is so open-ended. One round of revision up to X hours. So that when the client, and clients do this, they'll change the entire direction of the design. And you've had people do that. Like, we're going for a nautical room, and now we're at a pink room. And then we go to the pastel room. And you're like, all right, we're all over the place. You've got to clarify that they're changing that. And this is exceeding just like light revision. And again, point back to the contract. Use it as a tool to control your process. Stop letting these clients control your process. It's not their business. You have to let them know what it is. And again, A's and B's. And sometimes you can help them be decisive when they're just being unreasonable. All of us have had the clients that are like, it's good, it's okay, yeah, I would love to see something else. Like, it's good, And if I get out of that call and I'm analyzing like, oh my God, what they're asking for is like 3 times the amount of revision hours I have put in this contract. Well, what I'm going to do is try to help the client and say, hey, I think that these are your priority revisions. We have this amount of time in the contract. I think if I focus on these revisions and you see alternatives of that, these remaining revision requests that are good are likely going to turn to greats. If I just focus on these core ones, are you okay if we stay inside the lines and we do that presentation? And after that, if you want to drive more revisions, you'll understand that there's a little extra time, right? That's going to be required of that. Yes, that sounds great, right? Or you're clearly just outlining and advocating that, you need more time. That's fine as well if you feel like it's just a little bit more time. But we need to let them have say in that. And you also need to know that you can control your process through pointing them to the hours of revision that you set, and that likely they have changed their mind and direction off the sign off of your inspiration from the beginning. And these are the whys, right? We're always like big on the whys. You have to make it make sense as to why it happened. Don't press go. Give them choices. You will always have a happy client. So we're focusing in on revision. The next touch point I like to have is the order is fully put together. We are about to, Evelyn touched on this prior, we are about to place the order. We're jumping on a call to outline expectations. We talked mostly about that. But the second part we didn't touch on is, where do you stand in the project in relation to how you're closing your design fees? Because now we're at the end. So if you have borrowed time from other phases, if things have happened, or you're just simply over on flat fee, or however you've protected yourself, hopefully, we are doing a final alignment. Hey, I know we needed more time conceptually, or we used more time in that detail phase. Now that we're finally at the finish line, we're about to place the orders. Here's all the expectations of how that goes down. And here's what's remaining in your contract. And either we have to change the plan and edit back your management because time took longer in other areas and you're negotiating who is responsible for what. Remember, time is time. It either goes to the client or it goes to you. It is what it is. Outlining that and or upselling. So that's the last thing I want to leave this at. Your sale doesn't end at your closing call. The management aligns expectation, but it is also a series of upsells. I can't tell you, how many times I've gotten on a critical conversation call for another client and turned it into an upsell. not happy with the level of management, we didn't have that baked in. We're more than happy to take this nagging contractor off your plate. But for the remainder of this project for 3 weeks, on average, it looks like it's taking this much time. Do you want us to do this? This is going to be about 20 hours. You want to press go? Yes, let's just do it, right? You can take that into an upsell. And I think that's what everyone forgets. Your sale doesn't end at the first point of the close. It continues on through a series of upsells. It's tracked conceptually if there's added scope. It's tracked in the middle of it to make sure, at least on the client side, that you're controlling the revision. And then we're upselling again at the end in the management phase, where also the client's life has changed. The client also doesn't understand how much work it will take to manage that thing. So realignment with client life, whether they're traveling, whether they work from home, whatever it is on what they need, what remaining time is available, and upsell to the level of service that they need at that end game.
Yeah. And it's twofold because yes, all those upsells, couldn't agree more. And also it's your closing rate. There's two ways that being really successful with this brings in more to your business. And the closing rate is there too, because I talk to designers who say, oh, I don't take jobs that aren't full service, or, oh no, I don't allow them to edit that furnishing list. They're signing off on my scope or they're not. And I get that. But when you can really recognize the profitability within this and the opportunity to still end up building trust with that client and getting them to sign on for project management or getting them to go for the whole furnishing list because now they're bought into your design, whatever it is, I think there's just a lot more opportunity in this than some designers are taking advantage of right now.
Yeah. And lastly, what I want to end on is the most critical part of truly managing a business is ensuring that these type of processes in managing the money are not the number one thing that's cut out. The time logs are necessary. Pay someone to help you stay accountable. It's the money. I'm always like, are you a nonprofit or are you a business? What is going on? Because you're not tracking your time accordingly. You're waiting till the end of the week. There is absolutely no way that you are capturing your time correctly. You pay someone, 10 minutes a day to hold yourself accountable so that you're capturing thousands of dollars that you're missing. The weekly email sends, getting too busy and allowing those to fall off. Same thing. So now you're passing go with your client. You realize that you're going to stir the pot and you're just deciding to not bill them for it.
I'll just eat it. I hear it all the time.
Like, what? No, you should have 30 minutes billable built into every single project for your admin to be doing that weekly reporting and alignment of expectation with the client. It is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And we don't need to get held up on a couple words of how they're writing it too. Like, there's so much hold up with this. Just get it out, simplify it. If your assistant stirs the pot, then you step in, right? It's the same thing in retail. Sales associate,
Can I speak to your manager?
or anyone. Yeah. You're upset. They did something wrong. Like, let me speak to the manager. Pass them over. Now the client has time to simmer down and manage their emotions. You have time to process the situation and pivot around it. Not that we're
look
blaming
like the problem solver, look like the advocate to the client. Like, you look great in that situation. I know, nobody wants an assistant to make an honest mistake, but it will happen.
Right.
You'll make honest mistakes too. And you get to now be that save to that client,
Right.
and create that really positive relationship.
Exactly. You can always repair it. It is that sales associate manager conversation, and however you need to swing that conversation and saying, I'm so sorry, they were just following process. I've had a conversation with them. I've edited or revised or whatever the mistake was, and move on. Let's not get stuck.
Here's how we're
right?
making it right. If it is one of those, or sometimes it's literally just, I'm so sorry. That was a mistake. And a lot of times that's enough.
Yeah, don't be the bottleneck in this, because then you're going to let 5 weeks go by and then your situation is just going to become worse and worse and worse and worse. Yep. Invest into the management of the money. It is the best decision you will ever make. It should be the very first thing that you are having an assistant do when you're starting to build a team, control your profitability, switch your pricing model. Very first thing you have that admin who is helping you manage the deal, manage the client expectations. You'll always have a happy client. You're never going to have someone that is ungrateful for being like, hey, this is additional, or this person's taking more time. Do you want me to continue continue going? It's going to be extra. I want to be cautious of,
Right.
your time and money. Or do you want to take it over so that I am not getting, my time is not getting pulled where I need it in the installation phase? Who got mad at that ever? No one.
No.
Where's
and
the
that's
anger?
the thing, because you're saying
end.
like the money. And obviously, yes, from the point of the business owner, this is why we do it. And also, in case you need to hear this, your clients will be grateful for it too. This isn't something extra that you're asking of them. This is how you come across as buttoned up, totally polished, trustworthy throughout. They're in control. They're knowledgeable. This is a twofold benefit that both you and the client will be grateful for.
And P.S., they get to learn someone else on your team gets to build a relationship with that client through the consistency of this communication. And then when you're someone who's looking for more support with your client communication or scheduling or anything of the alike, this person already knows your admin doing these actions. You can more easily point them to this assistant to get what they need or get in communication with you to support in other lanes. It's like your perfect first milestone. But I think that, in terms of management, that about wraps it up for all the key markers. But just reminder that based on how you're closing the client, if we're working together, I will get much more specific on what that reporting should feel like to the client. It comes down to whether you're closing that hourly approach as a flat fee or a design fee retainer. So if you've listened to the other podcast, you'll know that I advocate one way of pricing, but two different perspectives of closing with the client on the money side. So,
because that's what it comes down to. Say it one more time, Shay. The money.
The money.
We'll leave you with that.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope you're feeling empowered to take control of your contracts, your retainers, and your business processes. Remember, it's normal to face challenges and growing pains. What matters is how you keep showing up, setting boundaries, and advocating for yourself and your business.
If you've ever struggled with refining your contracts, managing client expectations, and even just staying organized, you're not alone. We're right here with you, and we're cheering you on every step of the way.
And if you want more honest conversations, resources, and practical tips to help you lead your design business with confidence, make sure to join our email list at fordesignerbusiness.com/subscribe.
And if you're looking for support, whether it's talking strategy, working through a tough spot, or just needing a little encouragement, we'd love to connect with you. You can schedule a free call at fordesignerbusiness.com or check the show notes for a direct link.
Did you enjoy today's episode? Please help us reach more designers just like you by rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen.
And remember, we are cheering you on as you build the business and the life that you deserve. Until next time, keep designing and keep dreaming.